So if something is not right.
Everywhere else.
I think that's the whole point. So if you first go ahead and get the SCR. And our mic? Definitely, of course, then stuff will be on go. But
You're going to be quiet for just a moment, just for a second. Oh, it's quite a delay. That is quite a delay.
oh, yeah, a little really good. That's why I want to put it on the
We turn off our audio hearing ourselves. We don't need to hear ourselves.
I think this works.
Okay. Our mic is still working for them.
You guys can still hear us?
I think we'll get that out of the way really quick first. And then
We might not
kind of have
be able to do
our
that.
ongoing will be working with Brian and Blake and the course in templates that's moving on its own. So.
Yeah, I think so.
Can you guys hear us? Can someone test out the data?
Hi, Laura.
And then Brian wrote.
Can you hear me now?
I kind of proposed that. So that I totally appreciate it.
But I've got the.
It was really. So that I can have that focus.
How about now?
The argument that maybe we take the way we were.
Okay.
That won't be the change.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our January Faculty Senate meeting. We're going to start off doing roll call, and that will help us figure out. So I'll turn this over to you, Laura, for that.
Okay. We're back in this room and we might have to test the technology a little bit in the future, but we'll do what we can for today. So I have an updated roll call list and I added new people that I was aware of, but if anyone online or otherwise is new and I don't call your name and you're taking over for someone who suddenly retired, etc., just let me know and I can adjust accordingly. All right, so, and if you wouldn't mind, if you're here, if you can stay here in the chat, if you're online, that would be great so that we don't have the background noise issue. All right, Alan, here. Amber. Barrett. Brandenburg.
Here.
Kara Manika.
Here.
Carmen. Chambliss. Ben. Doms. Here. Davis. Louise. That. Dyer. Edelman. Here. Elman. Urban.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Galt.
Here.
Grappius. Green.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Hampton. Esther. Casino. Ellison. Han.
Here.
Nice. Kramer. Avonlea.
Here.
Yeah, here.
Julian Boone. McKinnon. Mason. Lenny. Blaine.
Here.
Olivier Parker. Here. Richter. Robert. Rollins. Cullen.
Here.
Shepherd.
Here.
Shin. Snipes. Smith.
Here.
Sykes. Talbot. Van Valen.
Here.
Weber. Wade.
Here.
Williams. Wofford. Yoder.
Yoder's here.
I assume we have quorum. I can see all the responses. Okay, well, just a note about our structure, our format for today. Our administrative reports are going to be moved to the more tail end. And Dr. Preston, Provost Preston won't be here. He has sent along a written report that you received in an email this morning. Read over that, and if you have questions about it, you can ask those of him directly. He happily receives those. President Kelly will be coming in after he completes a meeting that I think ends at 2. So he'll give his report in person when he's able to be here. General information just coming from me. First of all, thank you everybody so much for your hard work this last semester. We accomplished a lot of business. Some of that business was related specifically to curricular needs, both at the undergrad and graduate program level. And I appreciate both of our chairs, Kim and Patrick, for their hard work on that. Other items will carry over, and one of those that we'll be working on quite a bit this coming semester together, but mostly to the Faculty Development Committee, will be getting those criteria and rubrics clarified and in place for the evaluation of faculty, both annual evaluation and then our P&T PTR evaluations. That's being managed through the deans, and so if your college dean has not yet communicated to you about timelines for that, you'll want to connect with them and make sure you know through the deans or your chairs what the timeline will be for your college. But the FDC is available to provide both oversight, meaning they're going to look at these plans and make sure that they are fairly balanced. I mean, obviously there will be differences across programs and expectations, but the FDC will keep an eye to make sure on those rubrics and criteria to make sure that they're essentially in balance across the university. The final minor changes are being made to our faculty handbook policy that will ultimately be guiding this evaluation process. And I think there's just small things left that will be finished up fairly soon. Is that?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Jeff. There is one, may I share what I shared
Sure.
at the executive committee meeting?
Sure.
There is
Please.
one area where the committee feels that the comment by Dr. Noble at the BOR that the chair needs to do an independent review of in the post-tenure review is not in accord with the language in the board language, which says at a minimum, the chair will provide feedback. And so that is one item regarding which the provost and I had a brief conversation. We'll have a meeting to which I've also requested that we invite Dr. Urban, because under his leadership, the committee did a wonderful job so as to maintain continuity. And very likely the committee will request a meeting with the provost and the vice provost so that we can very quickly iron this out. And then I think the rest of it will be very straightforward. I also want to add to this that I'll give an example from my home program, chemistry. We have had 2 conversations just about how to take ongoing service and then convert that into a 5-4-3-2-1 scale. It's a non-trivial exercise. And we haven't converged in 2 meetings. So my request just as a colleague to fellow colleagues would be that this gets very nuanced and it is very time consuming. So please start sooner rather than later. In CACSI, the dean has requested rather that by early April, each program and department come up with guidelines. I don't know how it is quite working in other units.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions on that front? Yeah, please.
I just have a clarifying question. Any USG changes are not applicable to this cycle of annual evaluations, correct?
This cycle will not be affected. The plan is to try to have things ready summer and try to implement them in the fall, knowing that certain criteria for student success, for example, will take time to build up. And so the expectations of like those criteria being met will still kind of have to be rolled out over a couple of years.
Thank you.
But the USG is working with the BOR at their level on some policy changes that would help with the, as you know, we have a censor on the USG based on from the, what's the organization? AAUP, thank you. The AAUP nationally had censored the USG because of some language around the post-tenure review process. That language is being worked out between the USG and the BOR. So their policy can still also be changed as we're getting our policy in place. But at this point, we expect our changes to be so minor that we can go forward with criteria and rubrics at the program and department levels. To be implemented, if possible, starting in the fall, but of course, with recognizing there will be some time to get everything going, especially on those new criteria that will be in the policy.
Shelley, online, does that address the question that you just posed? There was a timeline for the UWG criteria approved by the USG or BOR.
Yeah, not a specific timeline. All the universities are in the process we're in of ironing out minor changes. And the expectation is that that will be done soon by the end of the semester at the latest, as also our UWG criteria will be finished by the end of spring. And so the changes to the faculty handbook will likely start to show up for fall. But the provost has assured me that there will be a sensitivity to needing to build up some of these new criteria, demonstrating our work in those areas related specifically to student success. Other questions or comments on this one? Gavin, please.
Thank you for that. So given what you just said, and that problem that might need to be ironed out, and obviously one has to assume good faith, but sometimes there are conflicts between an individual and a chair. So let's say the first year the chair has a negative, right? Gives you a negative. Then the second year the chair gives you a negative or something else. And then the third year it would go to the post-tenure review committee, to see if there's something still that needs to be corrected or another plan to improve. Are you saying that the chair gets a third crack at you right now?
Okay, I think your first part, should a faculty member get a score of 1 or 2 in any of the areas in 2 consecutive years, that automatically triggers a post-tenure review. That's according to the BOR language. There is language in there about a remediation plan as well. Now, the question that we are discussing right now is that as of now at West Georgia, when a post-tenure review takes place, there is a committee of one's peers in a program who vote on it, and then we write a letter and send it to the chair as a courtesy, which is then shared with the dean. If there is a requirement by the BOR that not only will the faculty committee, but also the chair will have a review, then we'll have to, they are ultimately the folks who say, no, you must have this. At that point, we need to be sure that the faculty handbook contains language about the sequence of steps involved in a post-tenure review, much like we have in a promotion or a tenure, because there it is faculty committee, department chair, college committee, dean, etc., and it is very well defined. So I'm not sure whether it'll go that far or not, or the chair simply writes a letter. Then your next implicit question is, what if there is a conflict between the chair, who decides whether that post-tenure review is satisfactory or not, versus a committee of one's peers? One, I think in an ideal world, would also have to handle that in the faculty handbook. So I don't quite know the answer to your question. I hope it does not get too complicated.
So just for that, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, could we, I don't know whether we agree that once the chair's had his double pop at somebody, right, then it should, I don't know whether any of you agree with me, it should just go to the committee of your peers to get an independent look, right, without the chair necessarily being involved. Would that be preferable? I'm just trying to think of it.
In any kind of a remediation plan, I don't have the language right in front of me, but I think that the chair is involved if there is a remediation plan.
At the level of the performance improvement plan, of course, the chair does work that out together with the faculty. At the level you're talking about, if PTR gets to a point where a possible consequence, including termination, becomes an issue, which is after many of these layers that Farouk's alluding to. That's the work right now that the BOR and the USG are discussing. That there will be an independent review from peers before a termination decision would be made. And that's getting clarified at that level. So we're waiting to make sure we know exactly the language of that. But the effort of the faculty council, which consists of faculty senate chairs from across the USG, is to argue for independent peer evaluation prior to a decision for termination. Independent of chair.
Independent of chair, so yes.
Chair, dean, independent of administrators, that they would have faculty evaluate the final decision about something like termination. Doesn't mean that those faculty overturn a president's decision. It's ultimately the president, but would have that final opportunity to evaluate and make a recommendation.
Okay, all right. So
that's in the works now at that higher level.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes. Okay. The other major item, which is going to be new for this semester, but will include all of faculty senate, so I'm going to mention it here. President Kelly sent to me an email about a revised mission statement with options for revision that are to be reviewed. I think there's A through D, so 4 options. And also some values that are to be looked at and decided on as part of our SAC COC evaluation that's upcoming, and just our need to continually look at our mission statement. He's asked for feedback from faculty senate. your executive committees that your committees you serve on of the Senate, your chairs will be bringing that to you. They'll probably email you that list of options and then have discussions with you in your meetings about that. I want feedback, and I want it more than just a Qualtrics survey response. We'll probably do that too, but I really want your committees to talk about it relevant to your committee's focus and scope of concern, and then bring that feedback through your committee chair back to me so I can then present it back to President Kelly. The mission statement, he wants feedback from us, the Senate, by February 27th, I think it is. So we'll want you to address that as soon as you're able to meet. Questions or comments about that? Okay. I think that's, yeah, I think that's it for general announcements from me. Any general announcements from committee chairs in the room or online? Okay, we're going to go ahead then and turn the time over to Kim and undergraduate programs.
We have from undergraduate programs, we have items that will come for a total of 6 votes. That's how they'll be grouped. First, we have the introduction to archaeology courses, a proposal submitted as a revision, which will allow for this course to count as an option in core area E. The course already exists. Adding a course to the core does require Board of Regents approval, and this proposal is working its way there. But precedent does exist already for this course. Counting in area E, it counts at many other system institutions. Each school just has to submit its own curriculum request, and that's what this proposal is doing. The course does align with area E learning outcomes, and it will give students added choice and flexibility to meet their core requirements. Are there any questions about adding introduction to archaeology to county core? Ready for a vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. That one passed. Next, we have the revision to the Africana Studies minor. This minor is jointly housed in the English and History departments. The revision proposal is to change from what is the current requirement, currently stipulating that 2 courses must come from humanities and 2 from social sciences, to the revised requirement would state that students would take 4 electives related to topics of relevance to this minor from at least 2 different disciplines. This revision would increase flexibility and allow more courses to be included. It also overcomes complications that were created by the reorganization of colleges where courses are residing. Are there any questions about that proposed revision? Okay, then we're ready to vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Or any abstaining? One passes. Thank you. Next, we have 2 proposals related to the art education BFA program, and I'll explain them both and then we'll vote on them as a set. First is the proposal that involves a set of changes to the courses and a reduction in the total hours for the program. There'll be a requirement of 15 credit hours and 3,000 and 4,000 level studio art electives. 3 education courses are being eliminated from the curriculum. For accrediting art education teacher certification programs, the state of Georgia defers to the art accrediting body, and these proposed revisions will meet the standards of the accrediting body, the National Association of Schools of Art and Design. This reduction in total credit hours from 132 to 126 will also be in line then with the Board of Regents mandate that all teacher certification programs be at no more than 129 total credit hours. The students who are in the program as it presently exists will still be able to complete their program because no courses are being canceled, but the revision does bring us in line with the National Association standards.
Yeah. Also to add to that, since this is a Bachelor of Fine Arts with a concentration in art education, the only education type of course that the Professional Standards Commission with the state of Georgia requires is actually a special education course, and that is kept in there, and that's SPED 3715. Since it's not a Bachelor of Science in Education, the PSC has said that we do have that flexibility, and the state of Georgia defers to the NASAD standards for accreditation for art education BFA concentrations. So it puts us better in alignment with the standards. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our first proposal related to that program. And then the second is to create a track for community arts within the art education program. And this track would serve students who want to teach art in settings other than public schools, such as community centers or museums, and do not then want to seek teaching certification in the state of Georgia. There are only 2 other undergraduate programs like this on the East Coast, as I understand. And the program will utilize existing courses. Questions related to either of these proposals, the reorganization of changes in number of hours or track? And we'll vote all in favor. Any opposed? That was passed. Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have a proposal to add a course in advanced conducting for music. This proposal allowed this is the second conducting course that will be added to the curriculum. And this change is consistent with other programs in the state. It will be a 2-hour course. It will not end up adding credit hours to the program because there are other changes in the pipeline that are working their way through approvals, much the way art is reducing hours. The music program is also being revised to reduce its total hours, staying in line with the standards of its national accrediting body. So this course is the first one that has reached us for approval. It's adding this 2-hour course in advanced conducting. Any questions on this course? So we're ready to vote then. All in favor of approving this course, addition for music? Okay. Any opposed? That one's approved. Thank you. Next is a new course for biology 4130, climate change biology. This proposal, the course will examine the impacts of climate change on living organisms, biological communities, and ecosystems. It has been offered as a special topics course for 3 years, and demand indicates that it can be set up as its own course. It will be cross-listed as biology 5130, as I understand, but I don't think that course is that number is not being presented for approval today. So this would be the creation of the undergraduate course biology 4130, climate change biology. Any questions about this new course? But then, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Or any abstention? That one is approved. Thank you. And lastly, another course edition for COM 1100, Human Communication. This proposal will create a West Georgia version of this human communication course. Currently, the only option for West Georgia students to take this course is the E-Core version. And that does fulfill the core requirement for area B1. Multiple other system institutions have their own version of this course, and having a UWG version would eliminate confusion for students and provide a communications course for some majors that's more relevant to particular majors or career paths, since our current B1 offerings are exclusively public speaking. So this course does include public speaking, but also interpersonal and group communication, listening skills, and conflict management. Any questions about adding this, a UWG version of this? Ready to vote for that one? All in favor of this additional course? Any opposed? Or any abstain? Okay, that one's approved. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions for Kim concerning UPC before we turn them over to Patrick? All right, Patrick, come on.
Good afternoon. GBC has 7 items for vote this afternoon. The first item is from the College of Coxsackie, Department of English, Film, Language, and Performing Arts. GPC approved a request to deactivate an existing program, the Music Educator Certification Program. This certification program was designed for people with music degrees who were not trained in education. The program has averaged fewer than 1 student per year over the last 5 to 6 years, and currently there are no students involved or enrolled in the program. All classes for the certification are part of the normal undergraduate music education sequence that had been moved to evenings to accommodate working students in the certificate program with provisional teaching positions. These courses in the undergraduate music education sequence are being moved back to daytime from evenings to accommodate the larger population of traditional undergraduate students in the music education sequence. Thus, the small number of students who are working in provisional teaching positions during the day and might be interested cannot take all the required coursework. The music faculty voted in August to terminate the program. Are there any questions or discussion? And if not, let's launch the poll for those online. All those in favor of the proposal to deactivate the Music Educator Certification Program, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed? And those abstaining? Thank you, that proposal passes.
Patrick, I did not get a response regarding your earlier question that you emailed. So,
I think it'll be okay.
okay.
We'll have to. I'll talk about that.
Next proposal is from the College of Education, the Department of Counseling, Higher Education, and Speech Language Pathology. GPC approved a request to modify the Speech Language Pathology Masters of Education program. The program would like to change the admissions criteria for the program to increase equity and access for prospective students. First, the program will no longer require the GRE. In addition to removing the GRE, GPC approved a friendly amendment by the program to remove proposed language that the program would require completion of the Casper test. I didn't complete the custom routing of the edit before approving the proposal, and so am clarifying the approved amended version of the proposed admissions criteria. So in Curriculog, the version of the proposal that is approved is that the program will no longer require the GRE, period.
and they will not require the Casper test. In addition, the program will require 2 letters of recommendation as opposed to 3. Any questions or discussion?
So Whitney actually just literally wrote back and says that it needs to be custom routed back to the originator and then come to the faculty center again. So I think we might want to table this and until it reroutes again and then vote. Does that sound?
I'm sorry, I just stepped in.
Okay.
I thought I had a safe moment to step out.
So the speech language pathology modification needs a friendly amendment. But I checked with Whitney Brandon and she said it actually needs to go there.
I see.
And be rerouted and then come to us.
Okay, then we'll table it until we receive that amendment.
We need a motion to vote on that table.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
All right. So there's a modification to this proposal, has a modification in curriculum log that needs to be routed back to the originator to make a minor modification. And then it will come back. So I make a motion, call for a motion. So is there a motion to table this proposal to have this friendly amendment made by the program?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to table this proposal, please raise your hand.
Those of you online, I'm going to launch the friendly amendment. And this will count as what we are discussing at this moment. So all in favor? to
All in favor in the room, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you. Proposal to table that. Proposal has been passed. Next proposal is in the Department of Educational Technology and Foundations. GPC removed or approved a request to modify the school library media certificate in instructional technology, media, and design. Currently, the school library media certificate requires a student who does not hold a Georgia professional certificate to pursue the SLM certificate program, which is 21 credit hours, while concurrently obtaining initial professional certification through the Georgia Professional Standards Commission by completing 4 separate Education Core prerequisite courses, which are 12 credit hours, which constitutes 12 credit hours for a total of 33 credit hours combined. However, after the revision of the SLM Masters of Education from a 36-hour program to a 30-hour program, it is more efficient for such a student who's pursuing initial certification and preparation to serve as a building level school library media specialist in TK through 12 schools to pursue the Masters of Education program. Therefore, the program proposes removing the option to take the 4 additional prerequisite or co-requisite courses and limiting the SLM certificate to students who already hold a Georgia professional certificate in any field. To do this, the program requests 2 changes. 1, adding a Georgia professional certificate in any field as a requirement for admission. 2, removing the option to concurrently pursue the SLM certificate and initial certification by way of the 4 additional prerequisite courses. Any questions or discussion? Okay, we can launch the vote. All in favor, please, of the proposal, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Thank you. That proposal passes. Our next Proposal is also in the College of Education, the Department of Literacy and Special Education. GPC approved a request to add a new course, READ or READ 6705, Comprehensive Final Exam for the Masters of Education in Reading Instruction. Currently, the program faculty are notified by the Office of the Registrar with a list of tentative program graduates at the end and beginning of each semester. After the program receives this list, the literacy faculty reach out to every student listed via their UWG email to provide them with specific instructions on how to register and prepare for their required comprehensive final exam. Notices of the exam are also posted by all literacy faculty in their current graduate level READ courses. However, even with these two methods of notification in place, each semester 1 to 2 students on the tentative program graduates list fail to register for the exam on time. Having a 0 credit placeholder course will help the program ensure that every student on the tentative program graduates list registers and completes the comprehensive final exam required for graduation. Is there any question or any discussion or questions on this proposal? All right, we launch the poll. Those in favor of this proposal, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those opposed? Those abstaining?
Are you opposed or abstaining?
Abstaining. Yeah, I raised my hand too soon.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry.
All right, thank you. The next proposal is also in the Department of Literacy and Special Education. GPC approved a proposal to modify the Special Education Specialist in Education degree program. The Special Education Program faculty have requested a modification to their catalog description and admission requirements. The current catalog description requires that students who do not have a master's degree in special education to qualify for entrance to the program through the completion. Students who do not have a master's degree in special education to qualify for entrance to the program must complete 2 3-credit-hour courses. The modified language adds an option for applicants without a master's degree in special education to qualify for entrance with proof of a minimum of 3 years of full-time experience as a special educator or school-based experience as a speech language pathologist. The rationale for this change is in response to the growing number of applicants with speech language pathologist backgrounds and master's degrees outside of special education who have extensive school-based experience. These students have historically excelled in prerequisite courses and provide feedback in course evaluations that the course objectives add little value given their professional experiences. So just to clarify, the modified language would retain the option for students to qualify for admission through the completion of the 2 3-credit-hour prerequisite courses, but would add the option for them to, for student applicants without a master's degree to qualify for entrance by showing proof of a minimum of 3 years of full-time experience as a special educator or school-based experience as a speech language pathologist. Any questions or discussion about this proposal? All right, we can launch the poll. Oh, excuse me. Hold on just a moment. One more provision here, I apologize. That's the first half of the proposal. The second half of the proposal is a modification to the current admissions criteria. So the current admissions criteria require applicants to present a cumulative 3.2 grade point average or higher on all graduate work. The proposed admissions criteria would require applicants to present a cumulative 3.0 grade point average or higher on the last graduate degree earned. Special ed program faculty propose a modification to their admissions requirements to better align with peer institutions and prioritize performance on the last degree earned.
Anyone who has already voted online is like to will keep the results of the poll online.
Any questions or discussion about the change to the GPA requirements? All in favor in the room of the proposed modification, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those opposed? And those abstaining? Thank you. Our next proposed modification is from University College, the Department of Civic Engagement and Public Service. The request is to modify the criminology MA program. The criminology MA program is making modifications to both the crime and social justice track and the criminal justice administration track. Both tracks will now require, or would now require, Crim 6233, Ethics in Criminal Justice as a core course. Second, the Criminal Justice Administration track would require the Crim 6284 Graduate Capstone course to exit the program under this track, which replaces the current comprehensive examination. Any questions or discussion about this criminology proposed modification? Okay, we can launch the poll. Those in favor of the criminology MA program proposal, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Thank you very much. That proposal passes. Final proposal GPC approved is a modification to the graduate school's academic standing policy. The proposed policy on academic standing includes a number of modifications. These include updated language clarifying that the GPA that is considered for academic standing purposes is the graduate GPA, not the entire institutional GPA. A clarification that academic suspension only applies to a student failing a graduate course. But most importantly, the major update in the proposal is addition of a provision that would allow a student who has been academically dismissed to request reinstatement and readmission after 3 full terms to the program of study from which the student was dismissed. Previously, graduate students who were academically dismissed could apply to a different graduate program, but there was no provision under which graduate students who were academically dismissed could be considered for reinstatement and readmission to the program from which they were dismissed. Reinstatement would require the student to reapply through the graduate admissions process, and if reinstated and readmitted to the program, the student would be required to retake all courses that led to the dismissal. Are there any questions or discussion about this proposal?
Actually, so are we talking about just the reasons of grade this dismissal, not for academic dishonesty or dismissal for any reason? They wait 3 months, 3 semesters, and they can come back in?
So for instance, if they were dismissed for plagiarism for a conduct purpose, that wouldn't apply here.
Okay.
That's a conduct issue.
Okay.
If they earned an F, multiple Fs in a course after 3 semesters and they were dismissed for that, they could, in theory, apply for reinstatement. We would reach out to you all and you'd be like, absolutely not. They plagiarized, nothing's changed. We'd say, okay, reinstatement's denied. We all move on with our life.
Okay, so this is just a grade thing rather than the conduct thing, right?
Correct.
So, okay, great. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we don't deal with conduct.
Okay, fantastic.
Are there majors for which progress through a program requires it be done in X number of years so that the earlier courses don't go stale?
Technically, it's 7 years. So 7 years, after 7 years, a course needs to be retaken. Programs themselves, that's a programmatic thing. If a student comes back after a year, and the program conditions of reinstatement is that you have to retake additional courses, that would be up to the program.
Other questions or discussion?
I'm just curious about the accelerated bachelor's to master's program. Students who might be taking graduate courses as undergraduates, are they captured by this, or does that not even happen? Sorry, I didn't.
Okay, so the undergraduate, accelerated bachelor's, master's, the graduate courses count towards their undergraduate GPA though, correct?
I'm
This
asking
applies to the undergraduate degree. So this is a graduate academic standing policy. So my understanding would be, no, this would not apply to them.
Okay, so maybe where it says under academic suspension, the student who fails a graduate course, we need to say a graduate student, or does that just assume? Could that just be?
Well, this would be in the graduate catalog.
Only applying to those who are admitted into graduate programs.
Correct. Yes, because this would be in the graduate catalog. So that would be assumed.
Minor statement that says students in leadership roles only have 3 years to become certified.
Is that a
Is that a statement on the policy is important for a statement about our discussion?
Does the filter have an additional
Yeah,
question?
do you know
to
the-
follow with that?
Comment is, if anybody in here, students in leadership roles only have 3 years to become certified, so this is important.
I think
Dr. Bentis, do you have you want to add any additional comment or clarification about, detail about that point you're raising?
I believe she's inferring that educational leaders have 3 years to get done. So if they have a bad semester and they earn 2 Fs and they're dismissed and they want to come back to finish their coursework, this would allow them to be able to come back within that time frame to become certified to finish. So that way they wouldn't necessarily go somewhere else. It still gives them a path. Okay, yep, all right. My assumption was correct. All right, so now I can't say I don't listen to her.
Any other questions online regarding this academic standing policy proposal?
And in short, all we're doing is applying the academic suspension reinstatement to dismissal and extending it from 1 semester to 3 to allow the students that might have just had a really bad semester or traumatic experience or something to give them a possibility to come back. Right now, if that happens, there is no way they can come back.
I have a question. Does that apply to you get all the Fs in 1 semester? Or what if you get an F in spring and then you do well and then later on you have an incomplete that turns into another F?
So that's a great question. So if you get all Fs in 1 semester, you go straight to dismissal. If you get 1 F, then you become suspended. Everything's fine. You have an incomplete that turns to another F. You then get dismissed unless you've retaken one of those courses to get that F converted.
And then it's 3 semesters out.
And then it's 3 semesters out. Because now our new policy allows you to retake and replace a course grade instead of it being on the transcript and being merged. So good question.
Any other questions on this academic standing policy proposal? It launched the poll. All those in favor of the modified academic standing policy, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those opposed? Those abstaining? All right. Proposal passes. Thank you very much. Any questions for Patrick as he takes a seat? Okay, thank you, Patrick.
We'll now turn the time over to Jamie Brandenburg to talk about a rules committee item.
Yes, so I was contacted through by Legal Affairs to make a modification to the academic policies and procedures. Currently, there are 3 links to a policy that are duplicated in the faculty handbook. Therefore, the policies are listed in 2 separate places. And so what they want to do is delete where that duplication is. So they basically want to make sure that they take away the policies and any associated procedures and policy stat of the 3 policies that are listed here. They're currently going through and updating things. So this is the thing they're working on right now. And so these are the 3 that were duplicated. So they would like to remove those duplications from policy stat. So we do need to vote on this. Does anyone have any questions? And I am aware that we will probably be making changes to these policies because they're around faculty evaluation, promotion, and tenure, but they are listed in both places.
Recurring
So
faculty evaluations, promotion.
well, if we don't have any questions, I'd like to call for a vote. Those in favor of having Legal Affairs delete the duplication of policies and their associated procedures in policy stat.
Really quickly.
Is it too late to ask the question? Okay. I don't have the faculty handbook with me, but there are a couple of instances.
Hold on, we're gonna mute real quick. All right, go ahead now.
There are a couple of instances where the duplication is deliberate for additional clarity. So is it possible to share where the duplication is occurring and whether it is really redundant or whether it was done for a reason?
Okay, so my understanding, just so you know, they kind of shared what their process is when I spoke with them. Yes, things are listed, but they're through links where this is actually like if you pull up policy stat, these things are listed twice instead of it being an actual link to the policy. And so what they're trying to do is making sure that all of the policies are updated, that everything is correct. It would be more helpful if anything that's duplicated refers back to where that original policy is listed in policy stat. So if there was something about around a university policy, it may be listed in the faculty handbook, but it also might be listed somewhere else. And so what it would do is talk about what it is and then have a link to where it is so that if when it's time to update, they're not trying to find all these different policies and update them. They only have to update the one. And so the link would always be the updated version of that policy. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mhm. So are we ready for a vote?
Just presumably, we have looked, they are exactly the same, right?
Yes.
I mean, even if it's, you know, it's something that important.
Yeah, it is
in the company.
literally just a duplication. It is just a link to another list in policy stats that's the same. And so they're just wanting to get rid of the duplication. The original is still where it is. So we're not talking about just taking things out. We're literally just looking at taking these duplicated links out of policy stat so that it's all in one place.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions?
Jamie, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, Jamie, when you're ready, you can call for the.
Okay.
vote.
So those there, please vote either in favor of the removal of these duplications. So I need those who are in favor. Those who are opposed. And any abstention. Thank you. And that's all we have for rules.
That passes.
Any questions for Jamie that we'll try to manage before we move on? Thank you so much. Okay, we can turn the time over to President Kelly for his administrative report.
Thank you. Sorry, I was late. I was just at a USG meeting. And I'll update you on that process because it's a positive one. We had a large meeting of all the USG presidents a few months ago. And the chancellor excused all of the USG staff and just had the presidents and the chancellor, which we were very grateful for. That does not happen very often. And the question he put on the table was, how do we make the university system of Georgia run better? All of us had a lot of very strong opinions on that, especially things like, well, get all of these kind of silly policies that are about micromanaging institutions out of the way, right? Because that's not the way other states function, and you're actually holding us back. Well, he responded to that feedback by creating a series of task forces. They are filled with the 26 presidents from across all of the institutions. They take on a wide variety of different subjects: financial policy, dual enrollment standards. As you know, the technical college system of Georgia doesn't require testing for dual enrollment, but the USG does, and that creates certainly a disadvantage when it comes to attracting students into dual enrollment and making the choice between the TCSG and the USG institutions. So we are deeply involved in that work. The chancellor's request to us was, you have 90 days. I want to see outcomes in 90 days. I want to see actionable steps in 90 days. So we're working through, kind of on multiple fronts in the hope that we have policy changes and some updates to the way in which we're going to do business by the end of this fiscal year. I will tell you, it's some of the most heartening work that I've seen, certainly from a kind of a board in relationship to the institutions they oversee. It's some of the most heartening work I've seen in my career. I hope it turns into outcomes that are just as heartening. But I provide you that update because over the next 60 days or so, probably going to be reporting out on what the outcomes of those task forces are as we continue to work through those subjects. I'll give you another kind of a quick overview of things. First, we went to the SAC-COC annual meeting. We had a number of people who participated in that meeting, which was held in Atlanta. You know that reaffirmation is coming up for us. Our report is due in September of this year, followed by our offsite review and then our on-site review moving into early 2024. There's a lot of work being done. I'm probably going to mention SACs at every single faculty senate meeting until February of 24, at which time we should be done with our reaffirmation and our review, at least all of the things that we can control. But know that it is really, really important for anybody who is called on for data, for participation, for writing, for reporting, to participate in that. As I've told you before, I've done 3 offsite reviews this year. I'm about to do an on-site review as well, which are great preparation for us as an institution. But the standard for excellence for SACs is one that we have to meet, and we have to meet it in every possible dimension. So know that that's one of the most important things we're working on across the board. I think last time we were here, I invited everybody to Chris Clark's, who is the CEO of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce presentation here on campus on New Georgia economy. Gosh, we must have had 100 or more leaders there from across campus. We got to see that presentation and asked a lot of really good questions about the demands for the Georgia workforce. And I say that because we have a lot of people moving to the state of Georgia. And when you have a lot of people moving to the state of Georgia, then you have a lot of economic development. There's a lot of talent demands. And the legislature, every company, every force in this state is asking the universities to make sure that we're adapting to those needs. And he had presented some great data about the types of demand for healthcare jobs over the next 10, 20, and 30 years for tech jobs and computing, engineering, all the way across the board. And noted that we won't be able to meet those demands as a state, right? At least not the way we are currently formulated. They were serious problems that we have to solve. They are the problems that were presented in the legislature every single day during session. They are the problems that the board is asking us to solve. And it is really important that we continue to pay attention to that data. And bear in mind, while the greatest headwind we're facing right now is enrollment-based, he also went through those population statistics, noted things like if you have a baby right now, it's 1 year old, just born, and if you do, congratulations, but that baby's not going to college until 2040. So we've got to fill in a lot of talent gaps between 2023 and 2040. And when we have college going rates going down among populations, our work with K through 12 school districts has to be enhanced as well, because we've got to find more pathways to get people into higher education and make it something that they're able to navigate through with less burdensome costs and frameworks, because participation is just going to simply keep going down otherwise. Those are hard realities to present. I invited Chris here to make certain that we are hyper aware of the conversations that exist in this state, of the needs of the state, and how we need to adapt as a university. We're doing a lot of great things in that direction, but know that I'm going to continue to invite other thinkers and leaders to campus to make that conversation more robust among us. Chris Clark leads, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. He is very much in tune with so much of what's happening in this state, what's going to happen. And that's the type of leader that we want to be part of the conversation here. We had a Board of Regents meeting earlier this week. The Board of Regents took 3 actions in relationship to the University of West Georgia. One, they approved the Master of Science degree in Strategic Cybersecurity and Information Management out of the Richards College Business, as well as the Master of Science in Applied Business Analytics, which is fantastic. Great to add those to our portfolio. Now they go to Sachs so that we can begin offering those, I hope. Dr. Varga, you can tell me, I believe we'll be ready in August, correct? Second, they approved an honorary degree, which we will award in May for Zach Brown. Zach Brown, who regularly on stage cites his time at the University of West Georgia, how much he loves his university. And now we're going to bring him away from a global country music stage and to the Coliseum. I was asked immediately when the article was posted in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution this morning. And let's note that the AJC reported on all of the honorary degrees. The CEO of Microsoft is getting one of those honorary degrees from Georgia Tech, but Zach Brown, half the article. That tells you a lot about the opportunity that we have when we get to celebrate one of our own that way. But the first question I was asked is he going to be performing? He performs for money. And we're not getting into that question. We will give him an opportunity to say a few words and to address students if that's in his interest. It is not required. You have some people who receive an honorary degree who go, I really don't want to speak, but they do want to be part of that celebration. So I encourage all of you. We'll make sure we get some sort of walkthrough, and everybody, I'm sure some of you knew him as a student. For those who did not, we're going to try to make sure that there's an opportunity for faculty to meet him, just like we would any other honorary degree recipient during that commencement ceremony. We also started a legislative session over the last 2 weeks, and that has prompted a lot of committee meetings. So on the same day as that Board of Regents meeting, the Chancellor presented to the House Appropriations Committee, and he walked through, and it's really important that everybody at every USG institution is hyper aware of this. He walked through for the legislature a revisiting of the funding formula. The funding formula for the universities in the state of Georgia was established in 1984. I still believe it's the year before Back to the Future. That's a long time ago. And at that point, it was a 75-25, 75% funding for the costs of university education came from the state, 25% from tuition. Now I believe it's 57-43. And that number changes on an annualized basis. So the funding formula is way out of date. It's based on student credit hour. It's based on head count. The problem is when you award dollars based on student credit hours and head count, you miss the creation of a growth economy. So we have to go and compete with each other as universities in order to get base funding. We also have a 2-year lag. So whatever our enrollment was 2 years ago, that is the basis for our state funding this year, which means whatever our enrollment is this year, that will be the basis for our state funding 2 years from now. Well, that makes sense for accountants. It doesn't always make sense for universities. When we have dramatic increases in utility costs, like we did this year, our utility costs have gone up almost 60% year over year. Well, the state doesn't adjust the funding formula for that. They do approve Georgia Power to have a rate increase and other utilities, but they don't then go and backfill it in the funding model for institutions like ours and other state agencies. So the Chancellor made a presentation to the Appropriations Committee that really walks through that history and then provided some input into how we might revisit that funding formula. There is an openness in the legislature to do that, but don't think that that hasn't come up before. That question's been raised many times since 1984. And we have yet to have a revision. Having a former governor as a chancellor probably gives us an opportunity to do that. And I hope we take advantage of that window because it is something that is outdated and it's hurting universities if that's the way we're going to continue to operate. The USG also brought out some enrollment projections, which they do on an annual basis. They come out of the Carl Vinson Institute at the University of Georgia. The enrollment projections, and I know this is going to shock you, really show that almost all of the universities are flat for the next 15 years. That's the growth projection. Now, if I go back 2 or 3 years, I'm going to see a totally different picture that was brought out from those projections. I don't think that's the way it will actually shake out. Quite frankly, I think the kind of the economy of the USG and student choice related to institutions is going to change those projections pretty dramatically. And there's going to be some winners and there's going to be some losers. And I say that because that's the way it shakes out in almost any industry, and certainly ours in other states. Pennsylvania being a really good example of that, as you've seen their population decrease, excess capacity in higher education, and then how student choice really created what was going to be successful and what wasn't. Nonetheless, that data is out there, and it is the basis for some of the work that's being done at the USG level. And finally, I'll give you a quick legislative update. We are working through a process of advocating for UWG priorities, as well as USG. So I'll remind everybody at the beginning of the legislative session, we are given and kind of agree on a slate of things that we will advocate for as institutions, right? And those are across the board, things like the funding formula revisit. And then there are capital projects or other types of priorities for individual institutions. Same way we were able to do a $30 million renovation of humanities that are unique to the University of West Georgia. We're right at the beginning of that process, and bear in mind, 57 new legislators. So there's a lot of speed dating right now as we get to know new people and they get to know us. And they also get to understand how the legislative process works. Know that we're gonna be spending an awful lot of time at the Capitol this year because there are so many new people. But at this point, University of West Georgia has been very well received. All of those legislators are walking into office, those who are new, with either a predisposition toward particular institutions or no disposition toward them because they just don't have knowledge. I'm pleased to say that we've had a very pleasant reception across the board. And I hope we can make that turn into priorities and funding for UWG. It is a tighter budget this year. I know you've probably read about excesses in state collections and the like, and that's true. But there are priorities from the governor's office that have already been released. Governor's budget came out last week. Many of the USG capital projects, which we expected to be funded, were not fully funded or weren't funded at all in the governor's budget. There's still a lot of process with the House and the Senate. That's happened before, and we've seen different results at the end. But there are a lot of priorities in the state, and I'll give you one example. There's a fund being set up, and the governor announced it at his inauguration last week, to affect workforce housing across the state of Georgia. And that includes overriding cities and counties who have ordinances in place that make it difficult to build housing in a community that would accommodate, middle-class workforce. And that happens throughout the state of Georgia. That's a very interesting push for Governor Kemp. Putting money behind that and putting the authority of the state of Georgia behind that could change things like the opportunities that are available to us in the redevelopment of Maple Street, which is a key project and one we've been focused on for certainly since I came here. And now that entire Maple Street corridor is a tax allocation district. So there's an opportunity for us to reinvest in that space as a community and make certain that we have perhaps a revisiting of something from the past. Years ago at the University of West Georgia and hundreds of other institutions like ours, most of the faculty lived around the university, near it, close to it. That's changed dramatically across America, certainly changed at UWG and institutions across Georgia. If housing options change, all of a sudden there are incentives there for people who work in this community to also live in this community. and that makes a richer university town from my vantage point. So I share all of that so that we can connect the dots together. Other key priorities that I think you'll be interested in. One, the governor did include a cost of living increase for all state employees of $2,000 in his budget. Again, that's not a done deal. Last year, all state employees received $5,000 except for teachers, which were in K through 12, they received $3,000 because they had $2,000 the year before. I suspect some cost of living increase will make it through the entire legislative session. Mental health is also a key priority that came up for Governor Kemp. And making certain that as a state, we live up to Speaker Ralston, the late Speaker Ralston's charge last year to pour more resources into decreasing anxiety, treating depression, and a wide variety of other conditions across the state, because we're seeing so much demand in that space and not nearly enough resources being poured into it. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to take advantage of those as well. With that, I will end my remarks. I'll take any questions you may have on any subject. Please.
With the governor's proposed budget, when will it be voted upon and become final for FY24?
Great question. This is such a weird, somebody asked a question and then you had to go and replay it. I'm just going to repeat the question just in case. The question was, with the governor's budget coming out, when will it be voted on and become final? Session's supposed to end on March 29th. That's what the schedule says. Once session ends, all of that will go to the governor. Now, the budget can come out before the very end of session, but I would count on end of March. And then once the governor signs it, all of that would go into effect from a budgetary perspective in two instances. One, in the amended fiscal year 23 budget. So those are dollars that would be accounted for between the day the governor signs it and the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2023. Everything else would go into effect on July 1st, 2023 for the new fiscal year 24. That answer that question well? Great.
Thank you.
Please.
So previously you've indicated that after humanities is done, Pafford is on deck, so to speak. You just indicated that the governor's budget didn't have all the capital funding we hoped for in there. Does Pafford factor into that, or has that been a separate process? Could you give an update on that?
Yeah, great. It's a great question. The question was, I gave an update on capital projects. I've indicated that Pafford's our priority, but I left that out because so did the governor. And I say that's the beginning of the process. They also left Richards out, Richards College Business Building. I mean, most of the projects that we've done have been left out of the first term. That's my job to now go in, and we're going to go after it. Now, we're asking this year for $1.8 million in design funding for Pafford. It's a 3-year process, you'll recall, for any capital project. And we have to go and procure that funding every year. It's not like once you get it started, it's just guaranteed. So I'm meeting with many of the legislative leaders over the next 2 weeks so that we can talk specifically about that project and getting that design funding into this year's budget. Each of the House and Senate have some funding that the governor parks in his budget that allow them to go after particular projects that are priorities of the House and the Senate. I'm hoping that Pafford becomes $1.8 million of those dollars. Our entire legislative delegation is behind us on that front. And now it's just time for us to go and do that work. I can't guarantee that we'll get there this year. There's a lot of priorities in this budget, a lot of priorities, and but we're going to go out and try. I think we're in a better position than many of the other institutions. Many institutions are asking for dollars that exceed the discretionary funding in the House and the Senate combined, and we are not. So we'll see. If we do not get Pafford in this year's budget, it's going to be the #1 priority that we go after next year unless circumstances dramatically change. Look at legislative relations is about persistence and relationships. I mean, persistence is us making certain that we stay at the table all of the time. We have to stay present. Sometimes big expensive things take a couple of years. That's okay. We'll get there. Pafford will get done. I'm going to tell you that right now. It will get done. Pafford is an older building than Humanities, and the state knows that. So, good question. I appreciate you asking. Please.
Speaking of buildings, the move from anthropology, what's going to happen to anthropology building when that's done? And
Yeah, so anthropology, part of making certain we move out of anthropology is so we can shut it down. It is one of the costliest buildings on campus in terms of utilities, and we're trying to offset our utility costs as much as possible right now. Anthropology is on the demolition list for the state. It is not a building that has been deemed worth saving by the state of Georgia. And we've explored that. You know, that was on the demolition list before I got here. We explored that, and there are not a lot of arguments that are going to be made otherwise. So I suspect that will just remain what it is until we're able to demolish it. The process for that is a simple one. We go to the governor's office, and the governor gives us permission to take down a state building. And then most often says, and go and figure out how to pay for it. So we will. And unfortunately, we can't use kind of a, hey, let's all get together on Saturday and just start working on that. That's not the process. But it is, TIAS is the one that we have sitting for the governor's approval right now. And if we were able to open that up, you can imagine how campus changes if TIAS comes down. Because TIAS is, and forgive me if anybody thinks differently, is not a very attractive structure. So anthropology is on that list. I believe gun is on that list, which we have held on, obviously, because we need swing space right now for construction projects. But I believe those are the only three that are currently on the state mandated demolition list. And TIAS is the only one that's sitting on the governor's desk.
so we're told to do it and then not paid to do it. We've got to find our own money. Haven't been told to do it.
This is the way state government works. Yes. Yep. That's not the only thing. Please.
Let me ask you a question about the mission statement, even though I know you're at this point still gathering input. There are 4 options presented, all of which are worded fairly awkwardly. Is there any wordsmithing allowed within the respective options?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've never sent out anything at a university where wordsmithing wouldn't have been part of the work. So no, I'm open to feedback. I passed that. I gave everybody exactly what I received from that task force. And as we get recommendations back and feedback, that can certainly include wordsmithing. I have no reservation about that at all.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I have a question now that's come up from our executive committee regarding the status of the Along the Ridge project. I think it's been named. Just people are wondering what's the sort of plan for that or status of that.
Yeah, so that has been broadened, and that's been broadened. I know that's what it was called. We broadened it because UWG is really unique. Been around since 1906, and we have this historic part of campus and then this newer part of campus. Not everybody is designed that way. So we're trying to take advantage of all of that. We have a consultancy that we engaged quite a while ago, but they've had travel restrictions for a long time, specifically out of Canada or whatnot. That's a Haley Sharp Design. They're one of the finest museum design firms on planet Earth. And I say that I've had the chance to work with them in the past when part of my job was being CEO of one of our corporations, and it was a museum corporation. They do magnificent work. And what we've asked is, and what the board has asked as well, and know that we don't, this is state land, these are state buildings, and we don't get to do these things in a bubble that's just our university. Board of Regents has also asked, let's broaden that so that we really have an address of the historic precinct campus, which let's say would go from the Kennedy Chapel all the way down to, Sanford Hall and back a little bit, right? And how do we do storytelling that is robust and compelling, that gives you a sense of place? And the reason why Haley Sharp is so critical to that is the way in which they've done interpretation. I'm gonna give you an example because it's the thing that sold me on them the first time. They were working on an exhibit on Abraham Lincoln, and I forget precisely where it was, but they've done the Smithsonian, many of the Smithsonian exhibits that you see, and a lot of the design they've been involved in. They're really spectacular. So they had a space, and it was a room that was kind of large and spacious, and the walls were all white, kind of like an art gallery, right? And across the walls, and you could sit there for an hour and never see the same word twice, were documents and words that Lincoln had spoken, and kind of this beautiful array. If you've seen the Van Gogh exhibit that's been going around the country right now, and you're kind of it's an immersive Van Gogh exhibit, it was similar to that, although way before we were doing that, with all kinds of things. They were one of the innovators on that front. But right in the middle of that room was a glass chamber that went from the floor all the way to the ceiling. And it had to be 15 or 20 foot ceilings. Just a transparent glass chamber. And in the middle of that glass chamber was Abraham Lincoln's top hat. And it was one of those experiences that when you see it and you were part of it, you never forgot it. It was very impactful and very compelling. Now, you could have done everything I just described in a lot of different ways. They designed it around how are humans experiencing this. It also gives a great opportunity for students who are studying in public history, students who are studying anthropology, wide variety of disciplines that we have at the University of West Georgia to participate in that process as well, really defining the historic precinct and the storytelling for this institution. And I'll also note, Lynn's been working with this as well. We're doing a project on the Kennedy Chapel and the history of the Kennedy Chapel and Bobby Kennedy coming to campus in the first place. That is an amazing story for a university like ours. I mean, Bobby Kennedy came to Carrollton after his brother was assassinated to dedicate a chapel to his brother. And we don't talk about that in the way in which we should, because it again creates that sense of place that I think is so important. So over the coming months, I believe that Haley Sharp is coming in, I don't know, February, March, I'm not sure. We've got a number of faculty members who have subject matter expertise, who are participating in that. And then they do kind of some focus grouping because there are family members related to the Along the Ridge component of that we want to make sure are engaged. And they have been engaged along kind of this waiting time as we've quite frankly been waiting to get Haley Sharp here. I think I think that will be a magnificent set of outcomes, but it will unfurl over time. It's not going to be one thing. If we're going to do storytelling about our history, let's do it in ways that move people. Others?
Okay, anything online? Okay, great. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Any final announcements, anything from committee chairs you'd like to bring forward before we adjourn? Okay, thank you everybody for being in the meeting, for participating, and for the work you're about to do this coming semester. I really thank you for that. And we're adjourned.